Ooh, this question. I love this question because it makes people so like, and people get really intense about this question. About a week ago, I pulled over on my Instagram a couple of different questions from you guys, and I planned on answering them in a Q&A on my way to a pistol intelligence class with Riley Bowman, and that weekend was jam-packed. The drive was about 4 hours, which is probably the shortest distance in time that I've ever traveled for a class, so I very much appreciated that. But the drive was about 4 hours. We got in pretty late, and we got right to it the next morning. It was a really, really cold first day, and then we spent the evening kind of hanging out with the students at the Airbnb they were all staying at. It was a ton of fun. This class was just full of a bunch of really, really cool people, so it was really cool getting to meet them, getting to know them. And basically what I'm trying to say is I did not have any time to get to that Q&A, and so we're getting to that Q&A today. So the first question is, how are you liking your P365 versus your 48? And I have a dedicated video on this exact question coming up soon, but I think that I would have answered this question differently before the class with Riley Bowman, and I've formed my opinion a little bit more on the P365 since going to that class, and I got some really interesting information from the class. So it was a 2-day class, and the first day I ran my Sig P365X all day, and we did Riley Bowman's IQ standards, and I'll kind of link that down in the description below, and you can look at what those standards actually are. But my score on day 1 and then day 2, I ran my 48 the entire day. My scores were very different, and I knew that I performed to a certain level with my Sig and to a certain level with my Glock. I didn't realize it was quite that drastic. So yeah, my opinion is forming as I go on, but I'm not gonna get super into that in this video because I have a dedicated video coming up on that topic. So if you're interested in hearing more about my kind of feelings as I kind of compare the 48 and the Sig P365, look out for that video that's going to be coming up. The next question is, how is concealed carry gear and usage different for women versus men? Advantages/disadvantages? I think that this question, like, I could get so fired up on this question and I could do like a whole video on this topic. So I'm just going to barely touch on this question because yeah. So I would say as a whole, there is a really big misconception that there is women's concealed carry gear and there is men's concealed carry gear. There's guns that are good for women to shoot and there's guns that are good for men to shoot. And I don't think that I don't think that's true at all. My husband and I use the same carry setup. I started using the Enigma about a year ago, and he followed with that maybe 6 months ago. We both use an Enigma. We both use different holsters, but we both use Kydex holsters. We both carry appendix just slightly off to our right. We both have generally athletic body types. We both carry guns that are proportionally kind of big on our bodies. We both carry Glocks. Like, there's really not, I really don't think that there is concealed carry gear for women, concealed carry gear for men, guns for women, guns for men. There are, however, specific things that are designed for more feminine kind of clothing. So like the flashbang holster is designed to attach to a bra, and most guys don't wear bras. So that is specific to women. And there are advantages and disadvantages to pretty much any concealed carry setup that you're going to be working with. There's also things like corset holsters and belly bands and thigh holsters, and those are generally more oriented towards women. But if you follow my channel and my Instagram, then you probably already know how I feel about those products, and I have generally pretty negative opinions about them because I don't feel that they're safe. And it bothers me that those are specifically marketed towards women because I feel that, well, I'll just be totally frank. I feel that those products being marketed that way, and that they're not safe, I feel that that is kind of preying off of those who just don't know better. And I can say that having been a victim of not knowing better. I used those products once upon a time, and I had to learn that they weren't safe, and kind of discontinue that use and move towards something that allowed me to conceal appropriately and carry safely, and gain access to reliably. Ooh, this question. I love this question because it makes people so like, and people get really intense about this question. Do you carry with a weapon light? No, I don't carry with a weapon light. There's a school of thought that carrying with a weapon-mounted light is absolutely mandatory, and I think that's totally false. And I will just point you to a really, really solid Ballistic Radio episode that really got into the weeds on this topic. And basically that is whether or not a weapon-mounted light is a requirement for private citizens. I'm not going to get into that in this Q&A, but I'll link that down in the description. That podcast episode is really, really helpful for me when I was kind of going through that stage of deciding if I was going to go through the effort of working on concealing a weapon-mounted light, and also going through the effort of finding a holster for it and all of that process. The next question is, can we get a tips video for concealment for those of us who have a little extra belly? So I don't know if you guys know, but I do work for Filster Holsters. I made a video announcement on that a couple of months ago when I started working for them. And a lot of that doesn't really influence anything on this channel, but I create content for them. So I am posting videos over on their YouTube channel, and also just creating content for their website and doing all kinds of things. But if you want to see some more videos that I've been kind of making in terms of really specific concealment mechanics and things like that, I'd highly recommend you go check out some of the stuff that Filster's putting together. I recently put together a video on finding your sweet spot, and I was able to pull from a bunch of different body types, and I'm really proud of how that video turned out. I think that it's really, really helpful, and I think that a lot of different people can go to that video and either see their body type represented or see a really close representation of their body type. And basically what I did is just kind of went through how concealment works on those body types and where you want to place your gun and some of the concealment mechanics that go with that. But I was specifically using the Enigma. So a lot of those principles can be used when you're just carrying your gun on a belt with a holster that has a wing, and you can apply things like wedges and all that. But I'd highly recommend you go check out that specific video. Favorite holsters is the question. And I mentioned this earlier in the video. I do work for Filster Holsters. I was a customer of them. I was their customer well before I ever worked for them. So I felt that their products were quality products well before I was ever working for the company. So I would say that Filster Holsters make really great holsters, and I've been using their holsters for quite a while now. My favorite right now is currently their skeleton holster. It has everything that I want, personally, that I want in a holster, and none of the things that I don't. It has a mid sweat guard. It's also ambidextrous, which is great if you're a lefty. And it has fixed retention, which I really like, because when I fix my holster wing onto the holster, I can crank down on it super duper tight, without changing how tight the holster's retention is. So it has consistent retention all the time. It doesn't change. And then what else? It also has a rounded muzzle, which I prefer both for concealment purposes and comfort purposes. If my leg ever interacts with the muzzle of the holster, it's rounded, and so it doesn't bother me or poke me in any way. Also, like the end of a holster, depending on where it's positioned in the 10-2, it can interact with your pelvic bone, and that can be really uncomfortable. And I personally find that a rounded muzzle is more comfortable in terms of if and when it interacts with your body. But other holster companies that I respect and think make quality holsters would be JM Custom Kydex, Henry Holsters, Dark Star Gear, And I know I personally haven't used Tentacore holsters, but I know a lot of people hold them in really high regard and they make quality holsters. I know that I'm leaving a couple of them out. This is clearly not an exhaustive list. I'll link that down in the description as well, just kind of a list of holster companies that you might want to look into. And I also have a couple of videos on my channel talking about some of those companies as well. The next question is, how beginner is a beginner's class? I've never done a class, but I have some knowledge. So I actually never really attended a beginner's like firearms training course. A lot of what I learned came from my husband and I just going to the range. He had a lot of prior experience with shooting and shooting mechanics, and so he was able to coach me through a lot of the beginner stuff. I would say like the closest thing that I ever went to like a beginner's class was my license to carry class in Texas, and that wasn't really a shooting class. You do have to qualify at the range, but they don't give you any kind of instruction or anything like that. So that class pertains a lot more to like the laws in the state of Texas or whatever state you're in if you do go to take a license to carry class. But I also did take a private class with like a local USPSA GM, and I would say that was probably my beginner's class. But I wouldn't say that you necessarily have to go to a beginner's class. I think that it's probably more important to focus on finding an instructor who's going to give you good information. And so long as you're safe with your gun, you understand the rules of firearm safety, and not just that you understand what the rules of firearm safety are, but that you actually have kind of those rules built into how you handle your gun and you know how to handle your gun safely. If you're not sure about whether or not you are experienced enough to step into a specific firearms training course, I would really just recommend that you email the instructor. I have done that in the past, where I've emailed an instructor and kind of just let him know where I'm at. You know, I feel confident doing this with my gun, or this is like the time that I can get on this specific drill. And that kind of gives the instructor an idea for where you're at as a shooter and as a student. And they can kind of let you know, like, you know, you're not quite ready for this class, but I would highly recommend you go to this class. You won't really, so long as you're dealing with a good human, you probably won't get a negative experience out of just emailing an instructor and asking if this is the course that you should attend. And more often than not, they'll either meet you with a, yes, you are able to attend this class and I can walk you through this, or maybe you're not quite ready for this class, but I would highly recommend you check out this class. The next question is, what do you wish you knew before your first class? So my first class went, I think, as well as a first class could possibly have gone. My first class was with John Johnston. My husband was able to go with me, and it was kind of nice to have that like person there that I felt comfortable with. If you have the opportunity to attend your first class with someone, whether that's with a significant other or just a friend, it was helpful for me to just kind of have that, if you might say, security blanket. It was just nice having somebody there that I knew. But the class in itself went really, really well. And I don't know that there's anything that I would necessarily go back and change. But I do know of some people that have had some really, really negative experiences with their first class. And I would say that generally a lot of those regrets come from not finding a quality instructor to spend that first class with. The instructor that you're spending time with and giving your money to can really make or break the class. The class essentially surrounds what they are offering to you. So they might have the best qualifications. They might have all of these things that on paper makes them look like an awesome instructor, but you might arrive at their class and they don't have any people skills, or they maybe don't know how to teach very well. And that's really crucial. I would really implore you to kind of do research on your instructor. If you can email them, maybe ask them a series of questions. This can kind of tell you whether or not they're the kind of person that's going to be able to field questions to you in a class. I mean, it also will give you an idea for how they answer questions and how they maybe even teach. As a whole, I would say that the most important thing is that you seek out a good instructor And I think, again, it's a really good idea to email your instructor ahead of time if it's your first time taking a class with this specific instructor, or if it's your first time taking this kind of class, or your first time ever taking a class, period. I don't think that there's really anything negative that can come out of you emailing your instructor or even calling your instructor and just kind of getting to know them ahead of time, maybe asking them a series of questions. What setup / equipment will you run during the class? So the class they're talking about is the Pistol Intelligence class with Riley Bowman, and the whole weekend I was using an Enigma Express. I didn't have my sport belt on it because I wanted to be able to have magazine attachments on the belt, like multiple. I can do one mag attachment if I have my sport belt on, but I wanted to have like 4 on my belt. So I put just like the standard belt that comes with the Enigma Express on and attached some magazines to it. And then I was using a skeleton holster all weekend, but I was using the P365X on day 1 and the Glock 48 on day 2. And on both of those guns, I was running a Holosun. So I think on the Sig, I had the 507K, and on the Glock, I had the 407K, but I was using the dot feature on both of them. And I did really notice a huge difference in the coloring, not the coloring, but the sizing of the dots on the 2 different days. I still don't really feel like I have like a solid preference towards one of them, but yeah, it was a considerable difference when I went from day 1 on the 507K to day 2 on the 407K, because the dot itself is actually larger on the 407K. So I brought my gun up on day 2 and was like, oh my gosh, that's super different. So yeah, moving on. Who is on your list to take classes from? Ugh, I like love and hate this question because classes are expensive, and I make a point to budget for classes throughout the year every single month. So every single month I set aside a certain amount of money so that I can afford a class when it becomes available. I already have plans to take another class with Melody Lauer this year. And I don't think I have any other classes I'm like signed up for, but I would love to take another class with Tim Herron. If you guys didn't watch my like kind of review of his class, go check that out. I loved that class with Tim Herron. I felt like I learned so much. It was probably 2 of the most exhausting days of my life, but I learned so much, and I really, really appreciate the way that Tim teaches. Just the way that he communicates with his students, he's really, really positive. And I mean, all of the instructors that I've spent time with are really, really positive people. Just the way that Tim's personality comes through in his instruction was just a ton of fun, and it kind of brought energy to the class, even when we were all super exhausted. And he made it a really fun learning environment. So I would absolutely love to take another class with Tim Herron. My husband feels the same way. Who else? I would love to take ECQC with Craig Douglas. I need to get to a class with Masada Ayub. Let's see, what else? I want to take a class with Immediate Action Combatives with Cecil Birch. Yeah, I have this all like written down. It's just not all in my brain. I want to take a class with John Murphy. Yeah, lots of really awesome instructors out there, and my list of instructors that I really want to spend time with continues to grow. Oh, I also really want to go to the Active Self-Protection National Conference again this year. That was an awesome experience, and I got to spend time with a bunch of different instructors over a single weekend. If you guys can have the opportunity to go to a conference like that where there's a bunch of different instructors, I don't want to say like you get your bang for your buck, because I feel like I do with every instructor I've spent time with. But it was just a really awesome experience where, you get to go to, specifically with the ASP conference, you get to go to the ranch and you can actually have the opportunity to stay there. And so you're not paying additional cost on lodging, which lodging can get really expensive if you're traveling for classes. And then on top of that, you just get to spend time with a bunch of really awesome people. You're taking at least 2 classes a day, and just getting to have a really cool experience. So that's another thing I'd really like to go do again this year. But yeah, I could go on and on about this. So I'll do one more question. I feel like I've been talking your guys' ear off. Can't find clothes to work with the Enigma unless I buy like 3 sizes up. I'm very small framed, help. So I get messages like that all the time where somebody kind of describes their body type and the concealment issue they're having. Often they're trying to solve it with larger clothing, and they're feeling really discouraged. If that's you, please try not to be discouraged. You can get there. There's tons of educational content available out there to specifically address these issues. But I'm more than happy to kind of help you diagnose. So if this is you and you don't really feel like you're finding what you need to find or like comprehending the concealment mechanics, feel free to message me and kind of tell me about this specific issue you're dealing with, whether it's via email or through my Instagram. I'm happy to help. So message me, whether you're dealing with an Enigma or a belt or whatever. So I have found though that those issues are almost always related to placement, like gun placement, holster selection, sometimes gun selection, and they can all be solved. You're not beyond reach. You can get to a higher level of concealment and wear your size of clothing. You don't have to wear multiple sizes up to conceal an appropriately sized gun. So sometimes somebody has selected a gun that truly is way too big for them. And one of the ways to kind of determine whether a gun is too big for you, assuming you're carrying between 10 and 2, so between your 2 hip bones, is to take a measuring tape and measure right between your 2 hip bones, so the distance from hip bone to hip bone, and then measure the distance from the top of your optic, whether you have iron sights or an optic, a red dot, measure from the top of your optic down to the bottom of your grip, and then divide that to get a percentage. If the percentage is greater than 30-40%, if it's greater than that, you're probably carrying a gun that is proportionally large on your body, and you're going to have a harder time concealing it. That's not to say that you can't do it. I'm personally currently concealing a gun that is, I wanna say it's like 56% of my hip to hip distance, which is great. Like that's a really high percentage, and that is therefore a higher level of difficulty in concealment. But I can do it. And I do that by taking advantage of concealment principles. So by applying pressure to my holster, I'm applying pressure via an Enigma, or you can apply pressure via a belt. And you want to be applying pressure to something like a wing attachment. So when you're applying pressure to a wing, that makes the grip of your gun want to tip in closer to your body. And basically you achieve concealment by getting the gun to kind of nestle into the curves of your body, so that it disappears on those curves. So you have to be able to get the gun closer and closer to your body. If there's distance or gapping between your body and the gun, anywhere, whether it's the muzzle, the grip, or the rear sight, or something like that, you're going to be struggling with concealment because essentially you've taken a brick-shaped object and put it on you, which is an organically shaped object, and you're trying to make it disappear. And that's kind of made up of a couple of different things. So again, I'm gonna link some educational resources down in the description. I specifically am gonna link the concealment mechanics section of Filster's website. They have a bunch of graphics when you go to this portion of the website. They have a bunch of graphics explaining how concealment works and some of the really main need to know principles. And then below that, there's some videos that I got to participate in making that further explain those principles. And they even show examples of different body types and how and where you can place your gun and how those specific body types achieved concealment, whether it was with a holster that was physically longer than their gun, or the size of wing insert they put on their mod wing, or the kind of holster they were using. I was specifically using the Enigma in those, but again, so long as you're using something like a belt that applies pressure to your holster, you should be able to get desirable concealment results. So that's the end of the Q&A. Thank you guys. If you really stuck with me through this entire video, I am really thankful. I appreciate that you have taken the time to watch my content. Making content is kind of hard, and I have a brain that enjoys creating things, and I like being creative, but sometimes it's a little bit difficult. So I appreciate that you've taken the time to watch my content, and I will see you guys in next week's video.